Ladies and gentlemen, we've got a major update on the Greenland situation. With everything that happened this past week, the NATO cucking to Trump, now saying, you're the daddy, you're the god, and we will now pay 5%. Remember back during Trump's first term, like any good American president, he says, we pay a ridiculous amount to our military budget. The reason NATO is propped up, this was an agreement that began in like 1949 to combat the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union doesn't even exist anymore, but we're still for some reason in it. And we want you to pay your fair share. We cover, I mean, when you talk about NATO, the reason it's a deterrent for Russia and for China and for some of these other major adversaries is because of the United States being a member in the Article 5, in which the U.S. would have to react to any invasion of any of these NATO countries. How about you show some respect and at least honor these smaller countries, at least honor the 2% of your GDP to the military budget? And they cried and they threw a hissy fit. And here we are. Trump leaves office. The invasion of Ukraine happens. And now they're saying to Trump, you're the daddy, you're the king, and we want to pay 5%. They've upped it to 5% now. They cried during Trump's first term about him saying, you need to at least pay your 2% because that was the original commitment. Now they're upping it to where all these European countries are going to be paying 5% of their GDP going to the military budget. The United States has come out now with their big, beautiful bill under the administration and said, we're upping our military budget by $150 billion to $1 trillion, which will help cover the brand new Golden Dome, which is a extremely sophisticated missile defense system that is absolutely critical. It's way better than NORAD. NORAD functionality doesn't even do the same thing as what the Iron Dome does in Israel. I mean, it's going to cost a lot of money, I agree, because of the amount of land how big the United States is. But the point of it is we've pledged way more than 5%, even more, you could argue, than 10% if you're talking about $1 trillion per year going to the military. And I said, I didn't think that was a good idea. They should keep it at 850 billion, but I also agree. I think the Golden Dome is extremely necessary. And now all these liberals are coming out bitching against the Golden Dome. Well, are we going to be invaded? Is there going to be a land invasion against the United States? What is the one way we're susceptible? I mean, Israel reported, they said we shot down about 95% of the missiles coming from Iran. Maybe that's Israeli propaganda, but still, I mean, these domes and these defenses, they're important and they're good. And that's really what the United States needs to have. But take a look at this. Trump's Arctic ambitions extend beyond Greenland. Now he's also looking to buy icebreakers. And this is something with I mean, we know Finland now is in NATO. They joined in 2023. Trump said he wants to buy 15 icebreakers from Finland as part of the Arctic expansion. It's a big thing, and he wants Greenland. And I think now, listen, Greenland is still going to be tough to acquire just because you want to do it in a diplomatic way. It's one of those things to where if all of these European countries now like Trump, well, they don't like Trump, but if all of these European countries are now tolerating Trump and trying to work with him, we're in NATO. Trump is just going to say, we're going to leave NATO unless you give us Greenland. We're just sick of it. We really are. We're done with it. This is something that should have happened years ago. We know the history with Denmark and really originally Norway. I don't know why Norway doesn't claim Greenland if you want to go back. I mean, Denmark did colonize it. And so, but they're never called evil, but then we're evil because it's within our footprint. And Trump says, yeah, we changed the zone, the command zone from European to North American. This is within our footprint. This is ours. I mean, we're encompassing it. It's just like what China's doing to Taiwan. I mean, this is an inevitability. And look, I'm not saying Taiwan can't fight back against China. They can, and I think they will do a very good job if that happens. But what we're absorbing, it's like we're absorbing Greenland as part of the United States. Like slowly. It's just coming to us. And then you get one of these situations like Israel, Iran, we're just going to take that. Israel, Iran, we're going to take Greenland. Keep looking, Israel. And so you just do something like that. But I mean, obviously that's not what Trump did. I mean, it was only a 12-day war, but we would like to do it under the table because it's so unpopular. It is what it is. I mean, it is very unpopular acquiring this territory because people don't realize I've done the videos, I've done the historical reference on Greenland and why the United States should be really entitled to it based off of how big we are as a country, based off of the geographical location. I don't know, again, why wouldn't Norway demand it, considering they were originally in a union with Denmark, and they could maybe demand it back. It's like ridiculous, this historic precedent, who owns it? Well, no, the point of it is it's right next to Canada. We're way more powerful than Denmark. Denmark has to subsidize a fourth of the GDP to Greenland. It makes no sense. It's a bad relationship. Their living conditions are terrible. We could improve them significantly. And it's like, oh, what about our healthcare? It's 57,000 people. You don't think we can afford that? Really, 57,000 people? I mean, this is nothing. So that's why it's so important. But it's like, historically, we should be able to take this over, and really Denmark should welcome this, and we could have a great relationship with Denmark. Do you want to have a good relationship with the number one superpower in the world? We'll give you $20 billion. Those people don't even want to be part of your compass, if you will, or your sphere of influence, I guess is what we have to call it, even though it's really not. But this is insane. Now you've got people, the officials within Denmark, saying we're concerned. We need to do some type of deal with Greenland. Really? We're going to do this? We're going to go through the motions where you make some type of deal? Can your government really even support it? We're going to give you $20 billion. We have a much bigger GDP. We have a much bigger economy. We have a significantly better mining operation we can install with technology into the coastline. I mean, this is just stupid. This is stupid. Look at where it's located. This is a prehistoric thing to where they control it. We're more than happy to pay $20 billion for Greenland. We will pay you. We want to have a good relationship with Europe. But it's like, why the fickleness? What's the issue with the number one superpower controlling? Really, it's an important, critical Arctic landmass. So shouldn't the number one superpower control it? And then they say, well, technically you have military bases. Well, yeah, we earned those military bases because we protected it during World War II. That's another thing people have to understand. But the point of this is Trump is just looking to extend even more. And you can see Trump isn't just looking to acquire Greenland as he tries to get an edge in the Arctic. He wants ships that navigate the icy waters. Now he's talking to Finland about buying the 15 icebreaker vessels that can cut through seas that are frozen over. Trump saying, quote, I want to buy icebreakers. They're very good at icebreakers, in response to a question from a Finnish journalist. That happened on the 25th of June during that Netherlands NATO summit. And so these are the icebreaker vessels right here. There's a U.S. Coast Guard. So, Trump has also talked about acquiring the territory. Vance visited, going to a military base. I mean, that was a big visit, even though they say, well, the people didn't welcome him. Why? We need to just throw our weight around here and acquire this territory. I mean, this is a geopolitical process. And maybe, you know what? Maybe we have to wait until the lame duck period to put it into place. I mean, let's say Vance wins. I know people say, well, it should happen sooner. People have been saying we need to get this done. I agree. We should get it done and we should acquire it. But it's so unpopular, like legitimately. And look, people, they just don't do it research. They think we're like acquiring a country with like 30 million people and we're going to be some type of fascist regime ruling over them. That's just not at all. There's 57,000 people. We would help them and improve their life quality. And also give them more protection, way more protection than Denmark could, and we're way closer to them than Denmark is. And we would also help them mine and extract, and they would get an actual infrastructure, and they would be allowed to keep some of the amount that we mined off of all of our investments into the mining operation. Which you can say, well, that's what Denmark is doing right now. They're talking about setting up, because they have to do this. They have to try and sweeten the pot. So that's why you hear all these rumors about Denmark possibly doing some type of deal with Greenland, because they're worried about the United States. And obviously we can offer them a better deal. Look at our GDP comparison. Look at where we are in terms of our proximity to Greenland relative to Denmark. Look at our ability to defend Greenland. Our naval fleet. It's not even close. Trump wants Arctic control outside of just Alaska. And so you can say, well, technically we already have a military base, so we have influence. And look, the thing is this is more of a historical legacy play for Trump to expand the United States. It is. Yes, it is. because you could say, well, we could do some type of deal with Greenland to where they still are technically fully independent, but we're kind of like a watchdog, and we can still have mining operations in Greenland and all of this without technically owning the territory as a U.S. territory. You know, people will say this, but this is just how Trump is, and honestly, I understand. Trump wants, on a map, it to say Greenland is a U.S. territory, just like he wanted the Gulf of Mexico to say the Gulf of America. So, I mean, that's just what it is. And so whether, you know, minimum, we have influence in Greenland. We have military base. So we have influence. We have a relationship with them. We're trying to expand it significantly by actually, I mean, it would be nice to go to Greenland without having to show a passport. I mean, that's pretty, but no, seriously, it's same thing with the Bahamas. Same as well, which is an interesting territory to look at. But, look, either way, the point is Trump wants Greenland. It's important for Arctic control, and he wants it to be a U.S. territory. That's the reality. And so he's buying these icebreakers. He's doing all this stuff. You've got Trump's effort to acquire Greenland has been met with strong opposition from Denmark, which governs the territory. Even though Denmark, by the way, what is Denmark's opinion of the top two? You know, Greenland had an election a few months ago. The top two political parties both want to be independent of Denmark. So that seems pretty fascist by Denmark. You're that far away from them, and you colonized them, and you still want to rule over them. Why don't you give them back to what about Norway and their control? Does Norway get a say in this? I don't think so. See, this is what happens. Territories change hands. That's the point. Technically, we had claim of the territory in like 1942. What happened to Denmark in 1940 when they got invaded by Nazi Germany, and we had to help out Greenland? That's something we did. And then we were very nice in 1946 and made a charitable offer of gold, like $100 million worth of gold. Truman did, and they denied it, and we respected it because we respect these countries. We do. We respect these countries, but you know, at a certain point, it becomes like, well, if China is going to influence it, we can't have that happen. It's the same thing with the Panama Canal. If there's Chinese well, with the Panama Canal, you know, that's a violation of the Monroe Doctrine. So, you know, we can very easily kick China out if Panama's not going to cooperate. Panama is not to have relations and treaties with China in that way that they did. That's why the treaty got ripped up when Rubio went there. You know the story about Panama. Rubio visited, and then they just ripped up their treaty immediately. They signed a diplomatic treaty with them to have good relations back in 2017. That's why the Chinese Hong Kong company bought both of the ports on either side to track U.S. cargo going from either ocean, really. And so Trump wised up to it in his second term and said, we're not doing this anymore. You know, Trump is this new and improved. And so now he's got all of this awareness within not even just the sphere of North America, well, you know, but even within Europe. And you've got these situations like Greenland, which is in the U.S. and in the North American sphere of influence. I mean, we could argue that for sure if you look at the location of it. You know, we want to give Denmark $20 billion. This is going to be great for them. And we would love to get it done. But listen, they don't want it to happen. I don't know. They want to still control it. You know, they give Greenland subsidies. I don't know why they still want control of this land. They can't defend it. They don't have the military to defend this country. This is the biggest island in the world. You're not going to defend it. We're going to defend it. That's why we have a military base there. Greenland cannot have an army. We will make a deal with Greenlanders and the citizens to really just create an unbelievable living situation for them with amazing benefits. And we've got this huge GDP, and we are going to set up a major mining operation and probably cut significantly into the debt because they say even just along the coasts, you know, it's going to take an investment, maybe around $200 billion in total. This is over a long period of time. But we're going to probably extract $5 or $6 trillion in rare earth minerals and gold and other just very, very important elements. And so maybe we can make $100 or $200 billion in mineral extraction from Greenland within 10 years after the operation gets set up. You know, it's a long-term thing. With someone like Trump, who is aware of all of this, and Trump's just been, I mean, look, the Middle East stuff, we've overcome that, and it was a quick thing, and I said I wanted it to be over quick, and it was. But this is just, I mean, right now, there's really, I mean, if you look at the economy right now, this is pulled off as remarkable with the economy, to where he single-handedly tamed the inflation. We've made the full recovery on the S&P. Now we've got the S&P at an all-time high. We don't even have the rate cuts yet. We've got tamed inflation. The rate cuts are coming with the S&P already at an all-time high. See, with the Democrats, they need like massive rate cuts to have any form of serious GDP economic growth. They're like, oh, the GDP, was minus 0.3. Now it was revised to minus 0.5 contraction in quarter one. Quarter two is expected to be a 4% growth rate. That's with no rate cuts. The Democrats need crutches of rate cuts, and then that produces the ridiculous inflation. And even they had the weird pattern late in 2024 where the inflation was still relatively high. It really wasn't coming down all that much. And then they still do the rate cuts of 0.5. It wasn't even 0.25. So, and now it's come out that, Powell really does hate Trump. The Fed is like, Powell's probably going to be removed. This is not good. We know the economy is ready. Now it just needs the fuel of the rate cuts. And the rate cuts are coming. We know they're coming. They have to. There's no way. So how do we have this right now? We need the geopolitical stuff to be resolved. How about this two-state solution? This two-state solution that's been rumored now between Palestine and Israel. And Israel doesn't like it, but Israel understands that, this war has really, a lot of people have turned on Israel because you look at aerial photos of Gaza. I mean, they've destroyed the entire strip. They've basically destroyed every building within the Gaza Strip. Israel has. So the perception of them has gotten really bad. So they're like, well, maybe we need an off-ramp. And so it actually might be a two-state solution, but there is going to be the United States recognizing areas in the West Bank as Israeli territory. But see, imagine that gets solved. Imagine Russia, Ukraine at some point within the next 2 or 3 months gets solved, because it's rumored that's going to be happening. It's a very complicated situation. But there's actually a chance that might be solved within the next 2 or 3 months. And the rate cuts and the low inflation and crude oil already dropping back down and the 4.5% GDP growth and the tariff revenue of around $24 billion. And then we also have these acquisitions possibly of a Greenland, which is going to be a massive boom for us. We're already raking in 200 or 300 billion in tariff revenue. With this acquisition, when we get our mining operation set up and they do soil samples, they know, I mean, there is serious rare earth deposits within Greenland. And that's before any of the ice really even melts within the inner glacier, because Greenland is certainly a huge, it's the world's biggest island. It's huge. And so imagine, we get more access to inland, and it's just a plethora of resources. And it's not even about the resources necessarily. It's about Arctic control and ownership. And it's also about, Trump does want to expand it. This is a legacy thing. I mean, this is just how Trump is. I'm just telling people he wants Greenland to be a U.S. territory. Whether or not that happens, that's to be determined. Obviously, there's a lot of factors at play. The European powers are still against the United States acquiring the territory, but you would have to figure, based off of how big we are as a country, we could throw around our weight and say, you kind of need to give us this. Now, when it comes to Article 5 and would the European powers try and defend Greenland against the United States, I highly doubt it. They would not want to lose their number one biggest ally, especially their biggest ally against Russia and deterrence of Russia over a territory that, I mean, honestly, you could argue it would be worse for the United States to try and, whether it's invade or conquer Greenland, if it was completely sovereign. But the fact that it has this weird ownership by Denmark via a proxy deal, I think it maybe justifies a potential U.S. takeover even more, because it's not like these people are fully independent and they can operate. I mean, they can't. If they became independent, they would have to have deals in place with, whether it's the EU, whether it's the UK, whether it's China, whether it's the United States. There's all these deals they're talking about with all of these countries. To me, the writing on the wall, the writing is on the wall for the people of Greenland, that they want to be fully independent of Denmark. and they want to have their own country, but they know they have to operate it in a way that's reliant on other countries. By the way, including China. They have sought a deal with China. Right? This is a Western country located in between the NATO powers, in between Western Europe and the United States and Canada. And people within Greenland and officials are talking to China. I don't know where is the anger from the European countries about that. If China gains a significant geopolitical footprint within Greenland, do they not understand why that's a problem with the location of Greenland where it is? They should have zero say. And that would only strengthen Trump's case. And this is why I don't know why Trump doesn't bring, and I understand, like, you know, they haven't been talking about Greenland recently, and it's just the news cycle. It'll come up again. But, you know, within the past month, there have been talks where Greenland officials have sought out potentially doing some type of deal with China in exchange for China getting geopolitical Arctic influence. So is that not a concern? I mean, that seems like it would be the number one justification of Trump saying the United States needs to take control of the territory. But again, this is like a similar thing with the Panama Canal, to where, you know, we're not going to, although at least I don't think we are, we're not going to try and regain total control of the zone. I mean, we're going to have like proxy control of it in a way, because the way it's operated in Latin America, it's just not advisable for China to have any influence down there. And that's why that deal got ripped up. The United States acquiring the Panama Canal, as far as I know, I don't think it's necessarily worth it, because the tolls that Panama makes off of the ships, and it's about 70%, the ships that pass through the canal every year, 70% of the ships are U.S. ships, 20% are Chinese. It's U.S. and China, that's who uses the canal. But it only generates about $3 or $4 billion in tolls. So is that really worth it to go through all of that? I'm all for kicking out China for sure, but that's why I kind of think Greenland is a better option. And the way in which it ends up getting done, you know, maybe you try and really push for this during the lame duck. Maybe that's the best strategy. Maybe you push for it right after midterms, just because of how unpopular it is, right? And you think, well, could it become popular? I mean, who knows? Obviously, the Trump base will end up supporting it. But, you know, there are a lot of normies that say, well, you cannot do that. But I think most people don't even know that Greenland is not fully independent. They're controlled by Denmark. I think, you know, that is even the first step to get people to understand that. And that we did technically control Greenland during World War II, and that we do have a footprint on the country because of our military base, because of that. And the fact that, you know, there's a number of things, obviously, in terms of, you know, Greenland not being able to survive by themselves, Trump wanting to. I mean, technically, Trump can do all of this without actually acquiring the territory, like gaining Arctic influence in northern Greenland. And maybe that's the sweet spot to where, but I don't think Trump wants to do this, because I think Trump wants the country just as a legacy thing. But you could say, well, we could have like serious influence within northern Greenland. There's basically nobody that's in northern Greenland outside of our military bases. And that's really what you want, because that's a direct outlet to the Arctic Ocean, and to the west of Greenland would be the Northwest Passages in northern Canada, and that gives you more of an access to that. So, I mean, there's potential ways to do it without actually taking Greenland. Would Trump go for that? I mean, I don't know. We'll have to see. But the point here is that I was surprised that in terms of, you know, the NATO summit, Greenland was not brought up at all. That's interesting. Because, you know, you can say, well, maybe Trump, his interest is lower. I don't think that's the case. I mean, we'll have to see what Trump says within the coming months about it. But if you send Vance there, I mean, there's underlying thoughts that, yeah, he wants to take the country, and he talked about possibly, you know, using some kind of force to take it. Now, there wouldn't be any actual force unless NATO countries tried to defend Greenland, meaning they sent soldiers to Greenland to defend against the United States. It would just be us landing onto Greenland and basically securing the island with our military, because there is no Greenland military to fight us, nor would they want to fight us. I wouldn't think. It wouldn't go well for them. The only way they could get help would be from whether it's Denmark and whatever military they have, whatever navy they have, and also, you know, the European powers, which I don't think the European powers would want to destroy their relationship with the United States over Greenland. I really don't think that. Now, maybe I'm wrong, but I guess we'll have to see what ends up happening. It's one of those things to where, you'd love to do this. I mean, I think the best thing ever, and people really can't, this would definitely make it to be a more palatable thing for people, is if we paid Denmark for Greenland. And then there would be some issues because, Denmark has already given up significant control of Greenland. This happened back over a decade ago, where Greenland became almost fully independent, but technically Denmark still owns them. The problem is if we do a deal with Denmark, our ownership of Greenland would have to somehow increase pretty significantly because Denmark's ownership of Greenland is very loose right now. They don't have really total control of Greenland because of what happened in 2009, and that was a referendum, I believe, voted by the people of Greenland to become more independent of Denmark, and they still want it. So I think what Greenland wants, and the problem for Greenland is, it does become an issue to where it's just, the thing is with their situation, even if we parked nukes on Greenland, let's say if we took over the country and parked nukes on it because it's proximity to Russia, the island is so big, where we would position those would be far away from anything close to it. But people would be very wary of that. Obviously, they don't want any of that. So that is a thing to where you would say, all right, well, maybe that becomes a problem for the people of Greenland. But ideally, if you're talking about pure defense, it's very similar to Canada, to where these countries do not feel threatened at all. If they were threatened, you would see a fallout scenario with Canada. Canada would say, I mean, imagine Russia is invading through Alaska somehow with a huge armament. Canada would 1000% tell the United States, whatever you need to do, whether that's annexing us, whether that's taking us over, you do it. Whatever you need to do, you do it. That's just the relationship the United States has with Canada. But they think that'll never happen, so we want to have our own country. And I shouldn't do it in quotes because I don't want to mock it. I understand people having their own countries, but it's a situation to where obviously the people of Greenland do not feel threatened at all. They don't even have an army, and they would be protected by proxy via potentially NATO, although it's a little bit more complicated than that, and by proxy the EU, because of Denmark's relationship with the EU and with NATO. So we'll have to see. This is more about, it's not about Greenland being invaded by anyone. It's about geopolitical control in the Arctic. That's what I think the situation is. So we'll have to see. But either way, guys, make sure you like the video down below. Also follow me on X. Links to that's always in the description.